Clear Skies Astro. I'm Gustavo Maestre, and today we're going to be covering an incredible topic that I love, which is star trails. For me personally, star trails are Genesis. It's where it all began for me, and I do think if you haven't already started astrophotography, this is a great spot for anyone to start because you get to maneuver the camera, get used to setting the camera settings, as well as get some incredible pictures at the end. So this is going to be a full end-to-end star trail video. My goal in this video is to make it where you can watch this video, follow it step by step, and get your own star trails. Now, before we dive deep into this, please do pop that subscribe button down below. I really appreciate it. Now let's go. All right, so let's go ahead and get into this equipment here. The nice thing about doing star trails is it has a very minimal amount of equipment required to do it. And the great thing on top of that is that all of this equipment is transferable to regular astrophotography of deep space objects. Now, all you're going to need to do to get yourself set up is get yourself a camera if you don't have one already. This one is a Canon 7D Mark II, but any DSLR or mirrorless would work just fine. Then you're going to want a wide angle lens. This one is a 10 to 22 millimeter lens so that you can get good foreground as well as a good panoramic of the sky. Then you have your hood and an intervalometer, just a generic one off of Amazon, and you're going to want to make sure that you get one specific to your camera because in a lot of cases they're not universal. Then with the lens warmer, I use a battery pack where we plug this in. This will keep the lens from getting fogged. And really, these are all the pieces you need. You probably already have a ball head and a tripod, and what we're going to do is cover the settings in the next piece of this video. And then eventually we'll go ahead and get this outside to start shooting. But really, this is all you need. Just this little piece of gear and you can take some awesome pictures. So let's go ahead and get on to the settings. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into these camera settings. Now, if you're using a Sony or a Nikon, the settings might be a little bit different because I'm using a Canon. And in fact, even if you're using a different Canon, some of the buttons that are being displayed here might be slightly different on your model. However, these settings should be fairly universal if you're shooting in Bortle 6, 7, and 8 skies. I'm currently in Bortle 7, although it's slightly darker where I live behind my house. So I'd say that a Bortle 6 sky would be just about the same. Now, first thing you're going to notice is in the top left, I have the camera in manual mode. I typically start in manual mode to do all of my settings, and then once you connect your intervalometer, you'll move into bulb mode. Then to the right, you can see I have it set for a 20-second exposure. The aperture is set at f3.5. Generally speaking, I'd say to set it as low as you can. You can do a little bit of trickery if you have something cool in the foreground that you want some extra depth to. You can move this f-stop up to add some depth to your pictures. To the right of that, you're going to notice that the ISO is set at 320. Again, I think in Bortle 6, 7, and 8 skies, the 320 would be a great starting point. And then in the middle left, you're going to see that I have automatic white balance set. You can play with this if you want the pictures warmer or cooler, but I think the automatic white balance is the way to go for star trails and most of your deep skies shooting. Now, the other thing that you're going to notice to the right is I have the camera set in RAW. So RAW is the largest camera format that you can use, so the highest resolution, and regardless of what you're shooting in the sky, you always want to be in RAW mode. Now on this camera, to get into these menus, if you have not used this before, you hit the Q button to the right, which drops you into the menu, and then just above it, that little circle there, you can maneuver those buttons left, right, up, and down to get to the menu you want to go to, using the set button and rotary in the bottom right to maneuver the menu and make your selections. So these are the basic settings. As I mentioned, manual mode, 20-second exposure, f3.5 or f-stop as low as you can set it, the ISO at 320, automatic white balance, shooting in RAW mode. We are pretty much set here, at least to get started and to do some test shots to check if the exposure is correct in that, but this is a great starting point. So here's just a shot of the top of the camera to show you how to put your camera into bulb mode. You can notice that I have the dial turned to where the B is, and anytime you have your intervalometer connected, that's the way you're going to want to be set up. Now let's get on to the intervalometer. So here's a picture of a generic intervalometer. This is a Amazon JJC brand. Really, any intervalometer will work just fine. but this is a generic one here. A lot of the intervalometers you'll see are set up identical to this one, and then really when you're buying equipment, you don't want to spend much money on your intervalometer. They work just fine whether you have an expensive one or a cheap one. You do just want to make sure that you buy the correct intervalometer because it goes beyond just brand specific, but it's also model specific. So some models, even if they're all Canons or Nikons or Sonys, some models will use different intervalometers. So looking at this intervalometer here, you'll see the line under the self button. So that's the menu that we're inside of. Self screen, I leave at zeros. And then you're going to want to hit the directional to the right. It puts you on bulb. From here, you'll hit the center OK button and drop down and set it for 20 seconds. And then OK, once you select it, it pops you back up to the top. You hit to the right again. It puts you to interval. So this is the spacing between the pictures. And because we're doing star trails, you only want to set it at 1 second, because otherwise you're going to end up with some Morse code up there with some dots and dashes in your pictures. And I know you don't want to do that. So go ahead and keep this set at 1 second. You'll hit OK. It pops you back up to the top of the menu. You'll go to the right again. And then this is the number of pictures. I have my intervalometer set here for 360 pictures. The idea being that I'm taking approximately 3 pictures per minute, and I want to shoot for 2 hours. So it ends up being 360 pictures. If you shoot anything longer than 45 minutes, you're going to get some decent star trails. Your target, though, should be an hour or longer because the sky shifts at 15 degrees per hour. So if you don't leave it up there long enough, you'll get star trails, but they will be very short. If you leave it out there long, like about 2 hours or so, you're going to get some really good shifting of the sky. So it makes the pictures more exciting. Now we go ahead and we shift to the right again. And this one's personal preference. If you like to hear beeps all night, then leave your beep on. But in my case, I do turn off the beep. The camera itself will have a light blinking red, so you know that it's taking pictures. And you'll hear the camera taking the shots, opening and closing the shutter as you do your check-ins periodically to make sure that the camera and everything is working fine. Now, once you have the settings all entered into the intervalometer, you're going to go ahead and hit this start-stop button. That's what's actually going to start this intervalometer. And then once you're done, whether you shot the full 360 pictures or you decided to pull the camera in at an hour and a half instead, you'll use the same start-stop button to end the shooting session. So those are the basic camera settings and how to basically use your intervalometer. I think that using these concepts, regardless of the brand of your intervalometer or camera, will be fairly universal. So from here, we're going to go ahead and get the camera outside, get set up, and then begin our settings, test shots, and all that to get that going. But let's keep going from here. Okay, so we have all of our gear outside, and do forgive me if you get some noise. I have a road below my house, and you might hear some cars going by. But in any case, the next things that you need to do is get your equipment outside. So we have our ball head, our tripod, our DSLR camera with the lens warmer, hood, and battery pack. And we have that all set up to go. We've covered the settings that you should use for your camera, at least for a starting point. And now we just need to decide what part of the sky do we want to shoot. Now, you can use an app like Stellarium to locate where Polaris is. If you shoot at Polaris, you're going to get those circular star trails. If you decide to shoot elsewhere, then that's perfectly okay. In my case, where we're going to be just shooting off the back of my backyard, I have some hills that are behind there, and so we'll get good streaks, probably get some planes flying into the field of view, but we'll decide whether we want to keep them or erase them. But from here, you just basically pick your area of the sky you want to shoot, and then also pick some foreground items. Now, since we're shooting in my backyard, nothing that spectacular or beautiful to shoot back here, to be quite honest. Probably just some posts from my fence. But when you do your own shooting, you do want to frame up something nice. There's an entire art of selecting your foreground when it comes to shooting star trails. So do look into that, and maybe we'll do a video in the future about how to select those kinds of items. But pick something in the foreground so that you have something interesting in your picture. In my case, like I said, it's just going to be a fence. I am going to capture a palm tree, which is, I guess, pretty cool. And then we're going to go ahead and get that set up. So from here, now that we have the gear outside, we're going to go ahead and get to focusing. Now to focus your camera, because you're shooting basically at infinity, the easiest thing to do is to pick a target that's more than 200 meters away. Generally what I'll do is I'll point it out towards the hills and look for maybe a house or something or some lights over there that I can zoom in on the live view of the camera and then adjust my focus to zero it in nice and tight. So I'd recommend going ahead and doing something along that. If you're shooting out in a really dark sky or somewhere beautiful like the mountains or the beach, you can always focus out on the stars as best you can. So you're just going to want to target whatever it is more than 200 meters away for you to really dial in your focus. Now, after we go ahead and get the focus dialed in, then we'll go ahead and begin to shoot test shots, and we'll go ahead and review them to see how they come out. Okay, so hopefully I'm not giving you a Blair Witch feel here, but I went ahead and did a test shot, and I lowered the ISO down to 200 and ended out with a neutral histogram. So all you have to do is go into your camera, go to review if it's a Canon, and then go to info, and it'll pull up your histogram. This one's a neutral, very safe to use, although the ISO may change as the sky gets a little bit darker. So I just wanted to show you the test shot. All right, now welcome back. Last night's session went great. And I know that anytime I get to point the camera up, it's clear and the stars are out, it's gonna be a wonderful night. I'm sure you feel a lot the same with that. Now here's the image we had framed up looking southeast, and so this is gonna give us our nice arced star trails, and you can already see some trailing in this image. But bonus, I had extra time last night, so I went ahead and pointed the camera north. So at the end of the video, we'll also do a reveal of some circular star trails when you're pointed at Polaris. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention were the camera settings. The settings at the beginning of the video are an excellent starting point for Bortle class 6, 7, and 8, possibly universal for even wider than that. So I'd say that's a good place to start from. But on my image here, once the sky had went fully dark, the final settings for the camera were a shutter speed of 55 seconds, the ISO at 320, and the aperture at f4. So that's what produced this image here, and we had a nice solid histogram to work with. Now, the next steps that we're gonna do are load all of those images onto the computer and go through them one by one to look for any kind of artifacts, airplanes, satellites that we wanna remove. So in this example image, if we zoom in kind of close, there are a couple of hot pixels that need to be removed. You can spot them here. Now, you want to make note of the file number because once we go back into Photoshop, it's actually really easy to correct these. And then just for example purposes, on the next image, you can also see what an airplane going through the field of view looks like. So there's a couple of airplanes here. Lucky for me, pointing in this direction, I have San Diego International Airport just west of this. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of cleanup from here. But like I said, just make note of the file numbers, and then we're going to go ahead and transition over to Photoshop to clean up, create our star trails, and create our final image. So let's move over to Photoshop. All right, so welcome to Photoshop. I did want to pause for just a moment for those viewers who may not have Photoshop, that you still have some options. I would first convert your files from RAW to .tiff or JPEG format using any kind of app or website that you prefer. There is a website called freeconvert.com that can do this for you in bulk, which works really well. After the files are converted, then you're going to want to use an app called StarStax. And from there, you can use the lighten function to get a similar result as what we're going to get with Photoshop. But for those of you in Photoshop, the first thing we're going to need to do is to bring in the files in a stack. So you're going to go up here to File, go down to Scripts, and then Load Files into Stack. After selecting this, you'll get a pop-up where you're going to pick your files. So go ahead and go to Browse, click on the first file here, and then you can Control A to select all of the files and hit OK. Now it's going to pop the files into the list here, and then just click OK. And then Photoshop is going to bring these layers in one at a time. It's going to take a couple of moments, so we'll come right back once complete. All right, so Photoshop has finished loading the files into layers, and you can see it in the right panel here. Just in case your version of Photoshop doesn't have this panel, you can go up to Window and then select Layers to open up the same panel. But the nice thing we get to do from here is a little sneak peek at what our star trails are going to look like. So first, left click and highlight the first file, scroll all the way to the bottom, hold the Shift key and then left click one time, which will highlight all of the files. And then we're going to go to blending options. Right now it's in normal, and let's go ahead and hit the drop down and select lighten. So this basically looks at all of the images, and the lightest parts of those images come through. So you can see some really good star trailing here. This is a nice picture. I'm pretty happy with it so far, but we're gonna have to go back and remove some of the artifacts. You can see some airplanes in this area as well as down here. So let's switch this back into normal mode. And then we're going to click the eye icon here at the bottom and hold with your left click on the mouse and scroll upward. So we're going to remove all of these images out of the field of view, select and highlight your first image where you need to do a removal or adjustment of an artifact, and then click the eye icon. It comes back in. Now we can see those airplane trails in here. So let's go ahead and we'll move in, and you can use Control+ to scroll in on the screen. And you have a few different tools that I'd recommend. First, there's the Spot Healing Brush tool that you can select here. The other one is the Clone Stamp tool. These are two tools that make removing artifacts very easy. In this case, we're going to go ahead and go with the Spot Healing Brush tool. You'll select that, and then you can pick the size, hardness, and spacing up at the top. But I'm going to go ahead and leave mine the same. You'll go ahead and go to the item you want to remove and just left click. And I recommend not dragging because it becomes much more obvious when you do the click and drag. So just click through here, remove the items that you want to take out. I'm going to go ahead and finish up on this airplane trail here. And then this image is okay, at least for this particular airplane being removed. I'm going to go through all of the images and then circle back with you. Okay, so I finished removing all of the airplanes and artifacts from the images. And let's take a look at our star trails now. So first, let's left click the first file, scroll to the bottom, hold the Shift key, and then left click again, which selects all the files. Go to the blending options again, and let's select our lighten. And there we are, nice, clean, beautiful star trails. Next, we need to go ahead and save the file so we can do the final polishing. So let's go over to File, Save a Copy, and then I do recommend saving this in .tiff format so you can save it in the highest resolution. And then from there, we can choose other formats depending on where you want to post the image or how you want to save the image. So let's go ahead and we'll save this one here in .tiff format and remove the layers so it just becomes one flattened image. I recommend not changing any of the compression options, just leave everything the same here. Click OK. And let's go ahead and open our file that we just completed. So here we are with the image as it stands now. So next we're going to go and change all of the settings like the brightness, saturation, vibrance to really pull out this picture and make it incredible. So first you're going to right click on the file where it says background, duplicate the layer, just click OK. And from here, let's go ahead and open up the camera raw filter. There are two options, just so you're aware. We're going to be choosing the one in the middle. So select that camera raw filter. It will pull up this menu, and then based on your image, your settings might be different. But I'm going to go ahead and go through the settings here and make some adjustments. I want to cool the image down a little bit. I like to have a little bit of a bluish sky. And we'll work through these options. So you'll go ahead and pull all of these options based on your own eye and what you enjoy. You may want to change the contrast completely and make the sky look incredible, different colors. You can go wild on this. So, but you're taking a look here. I'm just going for some basic settings. I started off in the basic section. Next, we'll go to the curve, and I'm just going to raise the highlights a little bit and pull down the lowlights. And then let's go ahead and go with the color mixer and add a little bit more blue. So I do like these blue skies. I think they look neat. So go ahead after this point, whatever adjustments you've done, you'll next go into detail. And I tend to use more noise reduction on star trails to help smooth out those star trails. And now that that's completed, we'll click OK. And we've now, boom, changed the image into something beautiful. So from this point here, we'll go ahead and save it one more time. And in this case, go ahead and save your JPEG format. So this way you can post it to your social media channels and all that, blow all your friends' minds. And it's an easy format to use for anything you want to do, printing and that. But go ahead and change it now into that. And we'll go ahead and call this the Star Trails Final. And click Save. Keep the quality up at the maximum size. And we are done from here. So now I'm going to go ahead and work on the circular star trails pointed at Polaris, and we'll circle back after that. All right, so I hope you get some incredible star trails using the information in this video. If you did make it all the way to the end, please do like and subscribe down below, and high five. We really appreciate you watching these videos. Now let's go ahead and do our reveal of our star trails, both looking north towards Polaris and the southeast with the Arc star trails. Let's go ahead and do that, and I wish you all clear skies.